Good evening, all. My name is Brian P. Easton, and I'm the author of a book series called Autobiography of a Werewolf Hunter. And I'm your host for Whiskey with the Werewolf Hunter. Belly up to the Werewolf Bar. Welcome to our August edition of the show, everyone. It's the last month of summer, the dog days, as they're called. And of course, that means we can almost see Halloween from here. I always enjoy this time of year because of that slide into fall. School starts again, and around here, the crows start showing up and filling the skies. The nights get a little cooler bit by bit. And if I'm in the middle of writing a book like I am this year, the prospect of a new autumn has its inspirational qualities. Anyway, I hope you'll enjoy the show this evening and join me in a drink with whatever bitter brew that you have on tap. We call this our creature of the night. And once again, we are going to be toasting with Clark and Sheffield bourbon, our mainstay these days here at the Werewolf Bar. So, to you. And let me give you a quick update on a few things before we get too far in. First, like I said, I am in the middle of writing the Winter Fox Journals, Book 3, as Michael Winter Fox makes his way across the deserts of Palestine in that campaign of the First World War. Now, there's a lot of history here that most people, myself included, weren't taught in school. And it's been an education in researching it, as it always is when I'm doing the due diligence to make sure that my writing is as close to historically accurate as possible. Because if you know the series, I like to interweave fact and fiction and suspend disbelief as much as I can. Lots of things to know about the Middle Eastern theater of World War I. Not just in terms of troop names and movements, and battles and victories, but the vagaries of the cultures themselves, because this is quite a different aspect of the war compared to the Western Front and the European nations with which we are mostly familiar. And of course, the primary enemy in this part of the world, from the Allies' point of view anyway, is the Ottoman Empire, which has been around for hundreds of years at this point, and of course sees its final decline at the end of the Great War. So in and of itself, it's an almost mythic institution, 100+ years later, with lots of histories and mysteries to draw from. Also, while I'm not ready to reveal it just yet, I have a working cover design for the book, which I'll probably do a sneak peek of sometime before the end of the year. I don't know, maybe October, when we do our biggest show of the year. And speaking of big things, if you're a regular at the Werewolf Bar, then you know my fellow Permuted Press alumnus, singer, songwriter, composer, musician, polymath really, Tom Brannan has been steadily working on an original soundtrack for my books, specifically Autobiography of the Werewolf Hunter, the first one. Now, what do I mean by soundtrack? Movies have soundtracks, right? No, we're talking about books. Well, I can't be the only author to have designated songs for different aspects or chapters in my work, whether it's an instrumental that fits the mood of a particular scene or something with lyrics that line up somewhere along the line. And I've been doing that since well before I was published, using songs that I have no legal right to use, of course, to represent meaningful scenes. In fact, among the links in the descriptions down below, you'll find that soundtrack as it currently exists on Spotify. Unfortunately, there's not a field there for me to specify what song is for what part of the book, but you might want to give them a listen anyway. I digress. So a few years ago, I asked Tom if he would be interested in reinventing the soundtrack that I had compiled with new original music. He's been working on that ever since, sending me samples and finished products along the way. And we've shared several of those songs with you here on the show. Well, just a few days ago, Tom sent me a message saying that this is the last song, the link to the very last song on the list. He's done. A few changes, tweaks, and adjustments aside, we have a completed original autobiography of a werewolf hunter soundtrack, and I'm very excited about it. In a time where anyone can make a song using AI, it makes me very proud that we have some, 30 songs? Something like that? Written, composed, and performed by talented human beings with help from other talented human beings. So I wanted to let you know that this had happened and to expect a big to-do on this channel once it's all shined up and polished. Now, I'm not exactly sure what that's going to look like at this point. I'm still talking to Tom about that, and we're going to work things out. But it'll be something you won't want to miss, that's for sure. So, like and subscribe. Well, for the last couple of months, we've been sharing some werewolf-related merchandise that has come my way from various online vendors, specifically werewolf skulls, the last couple of episodes. And you can jump back and take a look at those. But there are also creators that I buy from who produce other werewolf-related merchandise, and I'm going to be sharing some of those with you tonight and in episodes to come. So that being said, let's take a look at some stuff from Etsy. All right, so tonight we are featuring a collection of werewolves, custom-made, handmade, by an Etsy shop called House of Wolfman and its proprietor, Charlie Lone Wolf. Now, here are 6 of his werewolves that I bought from him. He's done more, and I look forward to buying those when they're available again. But these aren't always available all at the same time. In fact, he has seems to have a pretty selective schedule as it comes to releasing these guys. And they're all limited editions, of course. So let's just start in. These guys they're about 4 to 5 inches tall. They're made of resin. Let's just start left to right here. Here we have Paul Nash's Wolfman. Now, you don't see a lot of figures made for this particular werewolf. Paul Nash, of course, is a famous, known as the Mexican Wolfman. He did a lot of Lon Chaney type roles in Mexican cinema, and yeah, it's unusual for an artist to make something after that, because he's kind of a relatively, I wouldn't say unknown, but he's kind of a second tier werewolf in among most horror fans. So that's Paul Nash. These are all solidly built and constructed. They're not jointed or flexible at all. They're just little statues with a nice base, and they display very nicely. So then we've got, this is Michael Jackson's Werebeast from Thriller. Some people will tell you it's a werecat. It may well be a werecat, but it's a werebeast anyway, obviously modeled after Michael Landon's Teenage Werewolf. Again, not a lot of statues or figurines made after this particular creature, Michael Jackson's Werebeast from Thriller. So I was glad to snatch this one up when it became available. So there's that one. Now we've got the Dracula Werebeast from Bram Stoker's Dracula. If you'll recall, in that movie, the Count not only transformed into a green bat type creature, he also has this wolf form. And you can find statues and figures and model kits of this guy, but I don't have any of those. So glad to add him to the collection of werewolves. Like I said, they all have a solid base on them. They're a solid resin painted with acrylics, and painted well for that. Then we've got this guy. Now, I'm not sure if this guy is from a movie or if he's just a general werewolf, but he's pretty cool looking, and I had to get him for the collection. He's got kind of the yellowish teeth, yellowish eyes. Uh, yeah, it just seems maybe like a garden variety type bipedal werewolf, uh, but very cool nonetheless. And we got, this was called, advertised on Etsy as the Colony Howler, which is obviously a direct reference to the Howling. And this is one of the Quists, I'm sure. I'm not sure if it's Eddie or TJ. Probably not TJ. He's got both of his hands there. Could be Marcia, but Marcia, I think, was all black. Anyway, nice howling werewolf here. He's the tallest one of the group. Probably my favorite one of the group. Now, for our last one, we'll start with the Reverend Lowe from Silver Bullet. He's holding the Peacemaker bat in one hand, get the patch over the eye. Don't see a lot of homages to the Reverend Lowe around. And then, of course, we have his werewolf counterpart, also missing that eye, the Silver Bullet werewolf, which is largely, I don't know if reviled is the right word, but is often regarded as one of the least convincing werewolf appearances, mostly because he kind of looked like a bear in most of those scenes that he appeared, or in the one scene that he appeared in full view. But movie itself was excellent, and had to get the pair of those guys into the collection. So, like I said, he'll be doing more of these. I think he's definitely got a Curse of the Werewolf Oliver Reed statue that I haven't been able to get my hands on yet. And I'm sure he has others in the works. But if you get a chance, go on to Etsy, look for House of Wolfman, run by Charlie Lone Wolf. He's got all kinds of different horror-related statuettes, not just werewolves. That just happens to be, of course, my penchant. So give him a look. Special thanks to Charlie Lone Wolf over at House of Wolfman for his ingenuity and excellent customer service, I might add. If I had a wish list of werewolf figurines that I'd like to add to the collection that I just showed you, and I've told Charlie this, I'd like to add a Weirdo Wolfie from the Groovy Ghoulies, a Fruit Brute figure from the Monster serials, a Bruce W. Wolfe from the 1976 live-action Monster Squad, Michael Landon's Teenage Werewolf, and a Wolfie from Rankin Bass's Mad Monster Party stop-action animated feature. Maybe we'll get some of those down the line, but until then, I'm going to keep checking his Etsy page for new werewolf developments. You should check it out too, and you'll find the link in the description down below, along with all the other links that have anything to do with the show, including, of course, and most importantly, the books themselves. Well, it's been a few months since Dr. T. Broussard has been with us, our resident expert on the occult arts and sciences from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. But he's back with us tonight to tell us a little bit about were creatures, narco-politics, and some skullduggery south of the border. This is Doc Talk Shop.
Hello and welcome to Talk Shop as part of Whiskey with the Werewolf Hunter. Tonight on this very special Buck Moon, I'll be discussing not a werewolf of history, but a werewolf account of modern day involving some South American politics and cultural issues. Recently, the previous Colombian regime was assumed by some in their own country to be evoking the spirits of the rare jaguar and supposedly was threatening people with being attacked by an owl or a rare jaguar. Now, this might sound ridiculous, but in that part of the world, the line between mythology, psychology, and media is very thin. And when you bring in religious conviction, that becomes even less of a thin line. With all that being said, there is no direct evidence that previous administration in Colombia is or has access to shape-shifting Jaguar-Shamans. It is very likely that these ideas were put out in the media by the administration to convey that theory to people who would then take it and run with it, kind of like a mind virus or a meme, but with a religious and spiritual significance. Now, while all this is going on in Colombia, in a small town in Mexico named for coyotes, there have been recent accounts of people going missing, people's homes being attacked, and the being suspected was again an owl. Now, the reason why these two stories are connected is very simple. In both cases, allusions to drug cartels were made. Well, what would seem to police to be the actions possibly of kidnappings and things like that, the local people interpreted through their local lore and imagery so that hitmen being outlaws, people that were from outside of the community, would be classified as rare jaguars very much in the way that the secret police of Chevalier in Haiti were named as the Tata Makut, who locally speaking were a breed of ogre under the control of Baron Samedi in Haitian voodoo. So again, in this case, it's very likely that the government was playing with this idea in Colombia, and the problem in Mexico drew on that same idea. Now, this story is important because it shows, one, that this mythology, this belief is still active in that part of the world. And we are close now to a time traditionally when the walls between the worlds are thin. so that you have natural cycles lining up with an active example of mythology, which is also connected with mundane happenings by the government. This creates the same kind of vortex of complex emotion that resulted previously in things like the Inquisition or the Salem witch trials. Now, make no mistake, if these are in fact cartel people, they're bad people, they're criminals, they should be dealt with as such. But many of these cases, it's the old person who lives on the outside of the community who gets blamed for these kinds of happenings. Very much how they would be blamed in medieval Europe. One intriguing factor in this is that in the Mexican account, the Nahual is not described as a jaguar or a coyote, but a large wolf-like creature. Now, this indicates an infusion of the local myth with folklore and symbolism from outside of the locality. Very much in the same way that the voodoo doll of legend began as a medical device in Africa and Haiti, but was infused with the European idea of the puppet to become the voodoo doll we would all recognize now from the media. It is important to keep in mind that what seems to us to be stories and, superstitious mania to the people involved are very real. For example, the people that report the Nahual incidents in Mexico, they're not reporting people. They're reporting sighting animals and things, and real people are being hurt by this. They're going on folklore and local symbolism to explain things that they cannot explain rationally. Which is how mythology evolves in many cases. Now, from an occult point of view, this can also indicate how a tradition like the Noel or Red Jaguar can be, in one person's hands, a positive protector, a shaman, a guide between the worlds, and so on. But in another person's hands, can be a soul-sucking sorcerer hitman for hire. Again, the tradition is not the issue. It's more the morality of the practitioner. And it is known that there are those who make their living religiously have been known to claim to be Ray Jaguar and so on as a way of getting more money out of their clients. In my own work, I've never had to threaten anyone to pay me in any kind of way. In fact, I have no living enemies, personally. So, with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this dual account, and I would ask you to be very mindful of the buck moon, and as always, good hunting.
You know, it's like Doc said, this kind of thing can be found throughout history and cultures around the world. He mentioned the old Haitian Tonton Macoute, and the Salem witch trials as examples. But anywhere you find the right combination of politics, religion, folklore, and fear, you have got the potential to create the kind of scenario with these Jaguar-Shamans like Doc was talking about. It's a bit understated, but the character of Griffin Pretorius, which appears in Heart of Scars and The Lineage, the second and third books of the original trilogy, is sort of the kind of operator who excels in this sort of supernatural terrorism. He blends his supernatural beliefs with his politics, and just like we're talking about, he makes things happen. And if I recall correctly, he is one of Doc's favorite characters from the book series. So thank you, Doctor. Always a pleasure to have you with us. Well, I'm going to have just another snort of Clark and Sheffield here and say that'll do it for us tonight. Appreciate you coming by the Werewolf Bar this evening. Be sure to check out all the links, like I said, down in the description below. And if you'd like and subscribe as you leave the Werewolf Bar. We'd be much obliged. Looking forward to seeing you again in September as we continue our slide into autumn. But until then, as always, happy hunting and mind the moon.